We look forward to hearing the words of Brother Adam. Thank you.
Good morning. So, it's great to be back here at church. There's something just a little bit different about being physically present someplace rather than just watching online. I mean, the good thing about watching online is that, especially having the recording services, is that even if you do happen to sleep in like I do, you are still able to, still watch these services at a later time. Or, if something's really good, which hopefully this is, we'll see, you can just keep on watching and watching. And that's something that's, that technology has been great with. But there still is nothing really just like being physically at church, which hopefully we can all start to come back to soon, as long as it's safe and healthy first. But my question to you is, what are your plans for today? What are your plans for tomorrow? What are your plans for this week, this month, this year? Everyone's got different types of plans. They can be big and be small. I know yesterday, my family, when we were trying to discuss what are our plans for dinner, and my mom, she was very proactive. She was looking at different restaurants, saying, all right, let's call this place, see if it's open. Give it a call. All right, it's not open. Let's try somewhere else. Give it a call. Oh, they're not taking reservations right now. My sister, she was on her phone trying to look for stuff, look through kind of social media, saying, all right, so this place looks good. Hey, Mom, give us a call. Oh, this place looks good as well. That looks good. So they're trying to plan out in advance. Then you have my dad and me who were on social media reading about sports and not really paying attention to that much of the planning. And that's because of our personality types. I'm a type B personality where I do not like to plan things out in advance as far out as someone with a type A personality does. That's just who I am. I'm more of a, in my words, chill, calm, go with the flow type of guy where, something comes up, all right, yeah, sure, let's do it. But I don't want to plan out every second of every day. And, sometimes that can be good. Other times, it's really not good to just relax and not worry about anything and just let other people take care of it. But, that's something which right now we've all had our plans changed. Where, one day we're thinking, all right, so next month gonna go out of the country, do whatever, and Corona hits and everything changes. Where all of our plans, they just got canceled for health reasons and for safety. And for me, it was a little bit of a bittersweet moment because this was my last year of college and I was able to graduate, fortunately, which was great. And Corona kind of hit right in the middle of my spring break. And so I wasn't really, when I left school, I didn't have the chance to say goodbye to a lot of people that I would have if, this place never happened, if this thing never happened. So there are still a lot of memories that, wasn't able to make. And I know especially because the last couple of weeks at school, I, had a bad hand injury where I couldn't use my hand at all. It was all bloody and really disgusting looking. But because a lot of my buddies, we'd want to go to the gym, go play basketball, go play some football, go be active. And I just kept telling them, oh, I can't do that right now. Wait until after spring break and I'll get around to it. I said, as soon as I get back, this hand's going to be healed. Well, never really went back. And that plans, they just changed on a dime. And all the preparation, they just went away. And luckily enough, I was able to start working, where I started working the week after my spring break, or technically the second spring break. And in that time working, I was just thinking, all right, it's gonna be a little bit temporary. I'll still maybe go back to school a little bit. So I have hope for these plans. That college plans, they never came back. So I had to start learning this new environment. And that's something that was completely out of my control. Where because of this whole external environment, my whole plans that I had made for me, they disappeared. And something which I kind of feel like I can relate to a little bit is, so at work I am a sales representative, and I answer calls on the phone and talk to different customers, which is great. But one of the tricks, or can be difficult things about that, is you don't always get call after call. Sometimes you can go up to around 30 minutes between calls, and you need to decide what do you have to do between those in that 30 minutes, where you're waiting on call between something which you don't even know when it's going to happen. You don't know the timing of when that next phone's going to come. You don't know if it's going to come now, 2 minutes, 30 minutes, or not even, something could go wrong. You don't even get a call for the rest of the day. And so that is kind of what we need to think about, is when we're thinking about what is that call for us, for that sales call. For me, that's the kingdom. And we need to think about, we don't know when the kingdom is going to come to us, but what do we do in preparation for that when we're waiting for that kingdom to come? And so I first want to read from 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 8 through 9. This talks a little bit of timing, in the sense that God's timing is very different from our timing. And so 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 8 and 9. But do not forget this one thing, dear friends. With the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day. The Lord is not slow in keeping his promise, as some understand slowness. Instead, he is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. And so this is kind of a confusing couple verses, because we cannot understand as humans 1,000 years being like a day, and a day being like 1,000 years. I think that's kind of the whole point of it, where we cannot understand God's works, but we do know that time does not hold him, and he does not see time in the sense that we see time. Where if we see something as poor timing, like when this whole situation hit and we all had to stay at home, we consider that terrible timing. But in his eyes, that could have been, perfect timing. So, you have your whole family together. You're able to spend more time with the ones that you love, being able to focus on everything that's going around you, and seeing the good in it instead of always necessarily the bad thing. Thinking, oh, I can't always go see my friends, go hang out with people, maybe not go to work, but we're still able to be together as a family and grow closer together towards God. And that is the perfect timing for God, even though it's terrible for us. And then we need to think about, where do we fit into God's master plan with this whole timing? And we need to put about it in perspective. God's plan is masterfully laid out, and we don't know all the pieces to it. We know that, he has the beginning, Adam and Eve, and he has the end, the kingdom. We don't know all the in-betweens, but we have a good reference, this Bible, which kind of helps us and tells us what are some of the things that God has laid out for us, and how do we learn from that. And we need to think about, all right, so I am one man. What can I do to help this master plan, and in preparation for this kingdom, this great thing that we all have going for us? And that's when we kind of start thinking about, what's our impact that we want to leave on the world. When I want people to remember the name Adam Richard, what are they going to remember? Are they going to remember the Australian comedian, which is the first Google search if you search up Adam Richard? Hopefully not. Are they going to remember me, the real me, as being someone that worked too hard and kind of put church to the side? Are people going to remember me as someone that loved my family and did everything I could for them? Are they going to remember me as a servant of the church who put faith before everything else, and everything else was a byproduct of that faith? And that's what we all should think about, because that is how we start to fit into God's plan. It's when we're putting Him first and others first before ourselves. Because God doesn't plan His agenda around us. It's that we communicatively fit together into His plan. And that might sound a little weird to think about, but all right, apparently not. but something that works with that is when you're thinking about the two different types of actions. When you have actions of man versus actions of God. And sometimes we as men like to think that we know that we're trying to that we know what the actions of God are, that we are the ones that are able to put those actions forth. But then we're actually doing it for ourselves, making it an action of man, where it's more when we're putting ourselves forward rather than for all or for the church or for God. And so I want to turn to Proverbs 16 verse 9. And that's Proverbs 16 verse 9. In their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. And so something that's kind of fun about this passage is that it kind of speaks a little bit to free will and how humans, we have our free will to make whatever decisions we want. But God is one that allows us to make that decision. He puts us in that situation. And it's up to us and whether or not we want to go through with God's plan or with our own plan. And if we're thinking for ourselves or thinking selfish thoughts for those plans, then that's a plan of man. And that's not where we want to be in terms. We want to fit into God's total agenda. And even though we don't know what it is all the way or all the specific plans, we know that if we're doing the right stuff that's in this Bible, then we can help to start establish our steps and establish foundation for the kingdom. And when we think about, making decisions, it can be very difficult. I hate making any type of decision. I'm very indecisive. But, when you think back on to the Bible and you think of Jesus on the cross, it was God's plan for His Son to die for us. But Jesus Himself had to make that decision to sacrifice Himself. And if He can make that decision for Himself, for the good of others, that fits right into God's plan. And now that doesn't mean that we have to go out there and brave coronavirus to, stand on the corner and preach and, get everyone infected. No, that's not what that means. It means that, when we're put into these situations, when we have the opportunity to put the church forward, to put God first, then we need to take it by the step and fit into God's plan and not into our own plans. But a difficult thing about that is that we don't know when the kingdom's going to be coming. So how do we prepare for an event that we don't know when it's going to be coming? So I have some ideas, but turning to the Bible first, I want to turn to James 4, verses 13 through 15. Now is James 4, verses 13 through 15. Now listen, you who say, today or tomorrow, we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business, and make money. Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. So we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. The kingdom could come tomorrow. Or, the kingdom might not even come in our lifetime. But no matter what, it is the Lord's will and whatever his timing and his plan it is for us, then that's how it's going to be. And so in preparation to get for that kingdom, waiting for that phone call that's going to come while you're waiting on call, what do we do? So I'd say the most important thing is you need to live every day in godliness. And living in godliness, that's not something that, you wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm going to go to church, and that's it. You don't just you don't make a declaration and that's it. You don't just put it to the side. You have to continue through with that. You say, all right, I'm going to go to church. You start going to church for a couple of weeks. All right, that's great. Then you start to linger out, and you're slowly fading away from that life that we want to be living. If you want to make the declaration to be kind to your neighbors, do unto others as you would have them do unto yourself, then you need to live by that and not give anyone a free pass. You can't say, you know what, I'm going to be godly on Sundays to Thursdays, but Fridays and Saturdays, those are fun days, so I'm going to get a pass on that. No, that's not how that works. You have to live godly every single day, because that is how we get to the place that we want to be in, the kingdom. And if we're giving ourselves any types of free passes, will God give us a free pass on that? Saying, you know what, you did good for the majority of your time, but even though you knew what was good, you still did it wrong anyways because you thought that you were better. We need to continually think that we need to serve God first. And if we're trying to put ourselves before God, then that is not the situation that we want to be in. We need to always be ready because, the kingdom comes on a Friday, but you're out partying with your friends, drinking a couple beers in the basement, watching a sports game while you're gambling on that. Oh well, you missed your chance. You weren't ready. You weren't on call. And all that other work that you did gets washed away. That's like the parable of the 10 virgins waiting for the oil. You had 5 that were ready, no matter the time. And you have 5 that were not ready. And, their oil kind of dimmed out. Their light vanished. They kind of disappeared. They weren't godly all the time. When the bridegroom came, the kingdom was coming. They weren't ready. So we need to be ready. We need to be always living in godliness. Another way to prepare is, a simple one, just to read the Bible every single day or as often as you can. And I know that a lot of people here read it, a lot of people out there read it. And something which is great about it is that you don't always have to stick to the same plan. I know that, growing up, my family always used to use the Robert Roberts plan. It's very helpful and, gets you through some ways, but, a lot of other plans are starting to come out where, where you're going from chronologically, where you're going based off a subject, a specific area, and you're getting more focus on one individual area, and you can learn something else that you might not have seen before. I know that, when I typically read, especially by myself, I like to skim, where I'm going more for speed than for actual quality. And so I can read, this whole thing. Sure, I can read it. If I went through from front cover to end cover, I can get it through on one day if I just spent the whole day reading this. Now, I wouldn't learn that much since I'm just skimming through it going for speed. But if you're taking the time to read through each word and you keep on going through it, and that's why, so many older brothers, they still read because they're learning new things each time they read it. We're not the wise, humans are not that completely wise in terms of understanding God. But this helps. And when we continuously read this book, we're learning more stuff each time that we read it that can help us better our lives and better serve God's life. Another way in preparation is to use our gifts to glorify God. I like to think that I'm somewhat good at playing the piano. And so, at church, I'll play the piano to make music, and that way, otherwise, Having a recording is really nice, especially right now. But it is still nice to always have stuff in person and live, and what can be beneficial to others. Some of the brothers here, they have gifts in public speaking, where they can move people with just one word, and when they come up to speak, everyone's like, all right, time to listen in, let's get ready, because they know it's going to be something very impactful. Other people, on the audience right now, I see someone whose name is Glory, and he happens to be a little good at soccer, and so is his brothers, and so is his papa. And you can think, all right, how is using that gift, how can I use that to glorify God? Think about who you are on the soccer field. Are you a person that's trash talking everyone, that's shouldering people, throwing them to the ground? Or if someone accidentally gets knocked, are you the person that's going there, giving them a hand up, saying, hey, nice shot, hope you get better? We can think about our own skills and think about however we can use them to glorify God. The Snuggles project that was run by Aunt Jennifer, using knitting and bringing other people that weren't specifically connected to the Church of Christadelphia, bringing them in to knit blankets for those which were extremely unfortunate, using whatever gifts that we have to better the lives of others in order to glorify God. And then kind of my last thing in preparation is, this one which I find very personal, is every night before you go to sleep, reflect on the day, because there's a good chance that you saw someone today, that today was the last time you ever saw them. And, I'm thinking a lot of people back at school, I will never see them again. Because I probably won't go to, school reunions. You might see them, might not. Might see them passing the street, might not. Am I satisfied with the way that things ended out with those people from school, from my childhood, my last interactions with them? Am I okay with the things that, that I left off on? And if I am, all right, that's great. If this is the last time I ever saw him, I'm okay with that. If not, what do you do about that? Do you just let that be, let it simmer away and say, okay, that feeling, it's going to go away? Or do you go out and be proactive, reach out, give them a text, a call, email? There's so many ways to communicate with people nowadays that just because you don't see them face to face doesn't mean that's the last time that you have to communicate with them. And something which is always important to think is never to go to bed angry. Never go to bed angry with a decision that you made. Never go to bed angry with someone who, seems to be infuriating you, to make you angry. But you need to resolve the anger and to find some peace where you can think, okay, I was mad at you, so let me resolve this. That way, if that was the last time that we ever did see each other, then we can at least find content and find some type of resolve and peace in our relationship. And it's kind of a weird thing to think about, the fact that you might not see someone again, someone that you can see all the time, but circumstances which may or may not be in your control, they happen, and it's all gone. And even though right now that seems like a bad thing, that you won't be able to see someone for whatever reasons, we do know that there is one reason in which we might not see some people, and that is the kingdom. And so I want to wrap up by reading from Revelations chapter 21, verses 1 through 7. And I feel like I like to use this passage a lot, and I feel like it's very important, very powerful, because it describes what our life is going to be like after the kingdom returns. So Revelations 21, verses 1 through 7. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away." He who was seated on the throne said, "I am making everything new." Then he said, "Write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true." He said to me, "It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty, I will give water without cost from the spring of the water of life. Those who are victorious will inherit all this, and I will be their God, and they will be my children." So when we're thinking about all this which is going on right now, we need to think about that we don't know the timing of when this kingdom's going to come, but we do know that God has a plan for us. And we know that this plan involves the kingdom, and no matter when it comes, even if it comes during our life, we need to be ready and be prepared for this plan. Because no matter what is going on outside with the world, we know that God has a plan for us. Plans for us to prosper, plans not to be harmed, and plans to give us hope in a future, no matter how long it takes.